Welcome to the Blossoming Wisdom podcast. Join us in conversation as we trace the path from the earth to the sky, exploring the traditions of magic, mysticism, healing, and devotional practice. Enjoy the episode. We're going to get into today's episode. We're talking about spiritual materialism. Shocker. So there's a great book, and we'll share the image on the video screen for those of you who are watching on YouTube, and for those of you who are listening on Spotify, we'll add it into the description box. And we want to explore the topic today about how the pursuit of spiritualism becomes materialistic consumption, and how people use spirituality as a way to propel themselves in a sense of importance in their pursuit of gaining power. And also, I would like to talk about how when we pursue, because I've been guilty of spiritual materialism for sure, many of times, like how we use it and it interferes with our connection to self. So, Chandra, you have started to read the book. You're nearly through it. You want to share some thoughts, some initial thoughts?
Yes, it is as if somebody would be really, really good in saying what is happening in the West with spirituality and saying it in a language that is very easy to understand for us. I am also guilty of spiritual materialism in a way that was, I think, as almost everybody, kind of unaware. So you go through these phases now and you discover a spiritual practice. And I love how he describes the relationship with the spiritual teacher as a love story. And it is the same with the teachings in a way, because you go through this phase where you fall in love and you really want to get close to these teachings or to these teachers, and then you start to play games like hide and seek and get closer and then run away and so on. And then there is this complete opening of the honeymoon phase, let's say, and then comes the harsh reality, and a lot of people then abandon by then. But they tell stories about how close they were with the teacher, or however great this initiation was. And it's interesting how he describes this process. I feel it as something that I have experienced in a way, or that I have seen very closely. So it feels incredible actually to read this book, because it's so concrete and precise in describing this process that it's almost revealing something in the self too, making you go through a transformation too. Even when you think, no, you're out of it and you're talking about the others, you're actually involved. No, you're always involved.
Right.
There is no other.
I also appreciated in how he was able to really put it in very easily understood and very relatable ways. Even the book itself is not so long, actually. So it's this and I appreciated that, to bringing to the awareness, the pursuit of spirituality as something to just consume, the next one and the next one and the next one, rather than giving all this space as well to allow things to really absorb, like cooking a stew, like somehow turning the heat on too high. Guru Dave said, maybe 15 years ago, he said after a class in Berlin, I remember even Mirabai was there, like at the time Mirabai was traveling around in Europe. And we were sitting at the table, And he said the tendency after class is to go and talk about your experience with everyone, and then you lose the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think like I was thinking like, well, shit. We all do that. Oh my God. With every, not just with him, but like with all the experience, our tendency is want to go from outside of ourselves and place it out into this material space when sometimes it just doesn't even have words, but then we try to find the words and then we shift the experience of it.
We twist it, actually. Yeah.
Monica, thoughts?
Yeah, it's to me it was very interesting because when we decided to talk about this topic, I started to read a book and I started to do some research, and then I realized that I've been studying with a teacher of mine for like 6 years now, that another friend of mine introduced me to. Her name is Marlo Brooks, and then I realized that actually, Trungpa was the teacher of my teacher.
Right.
So she's in her 70s now. And when she was younger, she always loves to tell this story. So when she was younger, she moved from Minnesota to Colorado, and I think this Buddhist school that he founded in Boulder called Naropa had just started, or I don't know, maybe it hasn't just started, but it was there, and she went there and she felt free in the way I'm telling this story, because it was my approach to get to know his book and um his ideas, because then I started to ask her and ask some friends of mine their experience about coming from that lineage of his, and then they were telling me a lot about this, yeah, how he talked about the importance of, yeah, bringing in spirituality into our lives, but how also he adapted to the American culture. He didn't pretend to be somebody, right? So I think you, Siri, were mentioning this to me too, how he saw that in the West, because if people in the West saw anybody with like a tunic, they will like say, oh, like, oh, you are a great teacher. And then he saw this tendency, and then he started to wear suits and to act more like a Western idea,
Right.
to like contradict what people thought spirituality should be. And the thing that, like, do you think that putting on a tunic is what makes you
Right.
spiritual? So he was like always contradicting these things. And when I was talking to my teacher and to my friends that come from his lineage, they always talk with such love about him, because they said that the other thing that he was really passionate about was mixing art with spirituality.
Yeah.
So how spirituality doesn't have to be something that's just like meditating or like achieving enlightenment,
Right.
but how to your practices, and specifically our practices, you can connect to that. And he was teaching calligraphy to my teacher Marlo for many years,
Wow.
and it will be interesting to talk to her at some point, because she has all these stories about him teaching her calligraphy and what that meant to her and how to connect. And then she started to like develop her artistry in that way and become a really great artist. And she does these beautiful calligraphy paintings. And yeah, and it really meant a lot for them to connect to him and to listen to him speak about different ways in which you can connect to your own spirituality.
Yes. You know, when he there's a great movie that you people who are listening can watch called Crazy Wisdom that's on YouTube that really describes his life. And certainly he's not a saint. He has some controversies, but being, and I know Chandra's the same, Monica's a little bit more gentle, but he was very wild, you know, so that really speaks to my heart a lot, in that when he arrived in London, he recognized that people were paying attention more to the robes than what he had to say, so he took off a suit, and eventually he kind of followed down this path of also drinking and smoking and being totally drunk, so it was also a big controversy within the Buddhists about how he was presenting and then his relations. But this concept that he was teaching, he has a lot of great teachings. And even I was listening to Dr. Nida, yeah, who was saying it's not all about crazy wisdom, so there's like kind of this like dialogue within the different Buddhist um, tradition about, because he was so controversial, but he did do a great service in bringing things down to a way, because there's some parts he was saying that also he had to teach in a way and in the language that the Westerners and of the time could understand. And this is interesting because I was thinking about how, Monica, you were saying how traditions shift, and sometimes teachers also, when they come through, they have to shift to teach it in a way that people can receive it, because the way people think and how they speak has changed so much, right? It doesn't mean that the teacher has changed in learning in the tradition, but just how it's formulated, right? But going back to the topic, because it's not really all about him, going back to this topic about spiritual materialism, certainly I'm no saint, for sure. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I still will, and that's great. That's how I learn. But I spent, as we know, we all know that I spent a lot of time in 3HO. So we're going to go there. So I spent a lot of time in 3HO. I was close with Yogi Bhajan, in his inner circle, all that jazz. And it was all about this show of showing how perfect we were. And I know that a lot of people actually were really striving for it, right? But when I look to the kind of the collapse that's happening, it's interesting to see who falls away and who stays based on their experience, because this external thing can't hold for very long, right? So if it's this show of the turban and you showing, okay, I'm wearing all the right jewelry, I've got all my tantric necklaces, I'm doing all of this, I'm showing up in my Mercedes Benz, then what?
White Mercedes Benz.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, right? And so somehow it's also, in a way, I would say it wasn't even really what, it's kind of this, I have to say, and I apologize for the, I love Jesus, but like it's also this kind of Catholic way of presenting something of light and dark, rather than this integration, right? And I can say I was really saved by the grace of God, because both of my sisters had children in the Dharma outside of marriage. And so they were really shunned by the Dharma. My whole family was really like, not by Yogi Bhajan, but by the community, because they weren't good on the outside, let's say like this. And I think it was the grace of God kind of saving us to really find our own experience within it to make us stronger, rather than relying on this external presentation. Because I see through social media as well that people really put on this show. I've got this chalice. I've got now all of my, what is this, Santo Paulo incense. I've got my Tibetan bell. I've got all my things. But then personally, I'm fucked up and I'm not showing that. Like, so when I look at people, I'm really grateful that, like, kind of my time, I was in the Dharma for a long time, and I still consider myself part of the Dharma, right? Because this tradition really healed my life. It really saved my life. But I'm really grateful that that illusion of it, with all of its accoutrements of white clothes and turbans, and I love white clothes, but I like it for a different reason now. That I didn't buy into that, right? That I didn't say, oh yeah, that's all for me. Thoughts? Did that make sense, or did I just sound crazy?
No, it totally makes sense. And
And I will say this one last thing. What was really great is in like, I'm not saying one tradition is perfect, but like, you know, like there was just there was a lot of intolerance that if you didn't fit this mold, you're out of the game. And then as soon as the collapse of everybody walked away saying it's all thing, and then they want to be friends, and I'm like, ha ha ha, kind of like good, but not laughing at their pain, but like just like now it's your turn to have this illusion kind of smashed, right? So sorry, Chandra, for that.
no problem. And this is even something else, because even now, as I see that the flag changed, that's also, in my insignificant opinion, kind of a showing off superficially, because if before you needed to be healthy, happy, and holy, and dress white, and have a huge turban, and be very modest, but also like very elegant and regal and shiny and so on, now it's like the opposite. So
Yes.
even the social media management and the new websites and everything. I also come from Kundalini yoga, but I didn't have an experience like you, because I was just going to class and then going back home and having some friends and coming to contact with larger groups in the European Yoga Festival all these years, and more in the Satnam Rasayan Sangat, which is in a way more colorful and spontaneous, even though also there are, as everywhere, no, this is
Right.
this is also a revelation to find out that these kind of things happen in so many different spiritual paths with so many different teachers, and you don't feel like yours or the one you're following is like doomed, because it's a part of the process. But what I wanted to say is that anyways, it seems like there is something to say. It seems like there is a sense of urgency and importance. I want to say I am like that. I am all shiny in the light and perfectly disciplined, and I take a cold shower every morning. I have the long beard and everything. And then now I want to say, no, I am. I don't wear white. I am myself. I am free. It's like the same thing. It's just going with the flow of a different appearance that is needed to be shown right now in order to be appealing, and in order to feel that you're the good one, that you're part of the good ones. Because this community situation in which there are these fields and these fields of judgment, fields of conformity, they happen because people want to be part of something bigger, and they want to belong, and they want to not to be alone, but to say, oh, I'm like them. I have this brand too, like, and this happens in every environment, not only in the spiritual ones, right? But this is when you just get lost and you don't progress in your spiritual development, because you just settle yourself for being like the others and fitting in. And then you really get lost, even though you are meditating 3 hours a day or whatever you do, because all your attention is put on this appearing in a certain way and making the others think that you are in a certain way, and convincing yourself that you are in a certain way, while actually completely ignoring who you are and which your tendencies would be. And this is why I think so many people had a huge collapse after 2020's Premka's book about Yogi Bhajan and so on, because they were, as you said, they were living in this illusion of healthy, happy, and holy, and then it broke completely. And when you created a palace of 5,000 floors with balconies and columns and halls and and this collapses is a big ouch. It's not like you have your hut made of straw. It's like a different kind of fall. So I hope that this whole people who experience this in a traumatic way got the chance through this to get back in touch with themselves and with their loved ones and with their spirituality, and are not still burning the books and creating Instagram accounts to say how bad this whole was, because this is also a way of just staying attached and not, again, outshining your own work.
Right. I think we talked about this once, and it really stuck with me is that when you start to question your experience is where you actually start to lose yourself. You lose your mind in that because you have your experience, and then once you start to dismantle it, then you're not sure about who you are in some way. Right? I mean, there's a whole topic in Triagio. Maybe we'll go there one day, maybe not. But for me, it was worthwhile to bring up because I spent so much time in it. And because the experience with it, I didn't have a rejection from Yogi Bhajan because my family was different. I didn't have a rejection from him with my mohawk sitting in front. When I called him, when I said I'm taking off my turban, I was still no problem, but it was the community that looked like, hey, you're falling, so there's also this spiritual materialism that fits within the group that may not even be with the teacher. So if we look at Chompen Rinpoche, he took off his robes to present himself in a suit so that he could present the teaching. So there's, I think, in this pursuit of this whatever practice that you're doing is really for the inner work that's maybe not even shared with the outside world, perhaps, because some of the experience that we have within ourselves is not meant to be shared, right? So would that still be spiritual materialism?
I feel that it can be still if you separate yourself from the world. If you start to feel that there is the moment of meditation in which everything is perfect, and there is the moment of going out and being in the world where nobody would understand, but you understand and you do your work, but you cannot share it because it's too precious, and people who didn't make your own, like the same experience as you, such a precious experience, wouldn't understand. And there is no exchange between the two. I feel it's fundamental that you just pour it in every moment, like make every moment sacred so that no moment is especially sacred,
Right. But I would say, though, if it's something that's done really to make your understanding more enriched, but not to take a position, because sometimes things can't be articulated. Sometimes there is no words to articulate what it is. Mónica, you have thoughts?
Yes, I have a question. Because we speak about like spiritual materialism and everything, and how people are creating this on the outside world, right? But then what's the purpose of being spiritual? Like, just take one step back. Why do you want to connect to your spirituality? And then from there, then maybe from there we can analyze what is spiritual materialism, like how is spiritual materialism manifesting. Because what I'm trying to get at is, I think of it like underneath everything It's just people's soul really trying to connect with something. And Chandra mentioned this also in a way. She said people really want to belong to a community because maybe you feel like you want to connect to people, maybe deep down you are really looking for something. So what's at the end of the day, what's the purpose of following a spiritual path? Why do you want to follow a spiritual path?
I think that's one, but I would add to it with this spiritual materialism is like consumption. The concept
Yeah,
as
but
is
that's
like
how it manifests. But why? Why do you want? I mean, it manifest. You are trying to manifest your spirituality through consumption. But on the first place, why do you want to have a spiritual life? Why?
I think I could say for me it's a sense of a longing. I think there's a sense, I think for most, maybe not most, but many, for many people, is that there's a feeling of separation that creates a longing to connect with something. And also, I could say for me, it's also in seeing that there's so much more than I am witnessing with my my eyes or my senses. You know, this mystery of this space, I think, is something, you know, I would say for me would be was my reason for pursuing it, is wanting to connect and understand more deeply and have something that's not limited to this physical space.
Yeah, and I think I was having this question inside of me because I was trying to understand what we're saying when we talk about spiritual materialism. I'm like, yeah, people are using these artifacts, or they are using social media, or they are creating a persona to say they are spiritual, or they are work on themselves for so long. But at the end of the day, why are they doing that? Because they want to yeah.
I don't know, but what I felt in these days reading the book by Chogyam Trungpa is that there is a weird connection between this ego activity, the ego that tells you like you will be safe, you will be
Right,
saved, you will be a better person, you can forget who you were, you will be completely transformed, so all your
right,
guilt goes away, all your um, all your pain will be transformed. There is something out there that is like a miraculous cure. There is a guru out
Mhm.
there that can just operate on you, and you will be just in heaven then. You will be
Yeah.
saved. So, on one hand, I feel there is this, especially in these times in which it's really difficult to be alive on our planet right now. Everything is very heavy and noisy and busy and violent and fast and confusing. So, there is a lot of research about something that can make your life more bearable or significant. And luckily, in a way, no, luckily, because otherwise we would all be just maybe just depressed, not looking for anything, no, not but in the same time there creates this busyness and this neurotic behavior of trying to find. And since now it's like buy cereals in the big supermarket, in which you have all these possibilities all over the internet, all over the
Yeah.
place. Every person you meet is a teacher of something or a healer of something, basically, like most. And so it's difficult to decide where to go. But in the same time, this activity of trying to get, to take, to manipulate, to appropriate, to make it yours and then sell it back to the world. What I felt is there is a parallelism with how capitalism works, with indigenous cultures, with what we were saying in the last episode, like with uh, all that is spontaneous tries to get colonized and then repacked and defined and resold to somebody else or to yourself. But of course, in this process, you lose the juice, you lose the real deal. And so then, what are you working with actually? Is it just a game of the ego? Is it just this trying to build a fantasy that is strong enough that will hold, but eventually it will fall? I feel sometimes in these years, the work we have been doing with Satnam Rasayan and with Kundalini Yoga, I only learned with Gurudev, not with Yogi Bhajan, so I don't know about him. But it was so harsh many times, and you really had to go in dark places. You really have to be in very difficult and uncomfortable situations. And when I tried to speak about it to some people, friends, good friends, they were like, are you crazy? Like, why would you do something like this? But my thought was always, the more I work on myself, the less I will have to work on myself in the future. So let's get to work, you know? So let's get through the shit. We are using a lot of shit words in this episode
today.
But so the fact that it's not about being angelic and appearing so nice and clean, but it's actually the other way around, is looking at yourself and admitting all your faults and all your mistakes and all your parts that you actually don't want to see. So it's uncomfortable, it's dirty, it's really dirty,
Yeah.
and it's scary. It's not nice. And once you go through something like this once, you have the appeal to, as you said, to tell everybody and to tell yourself the story of how you went through this chasing yourself, and then you find yourself, and in the process of making up this story, you lose the experience. You don't lose it, but you lose it now, because it's a memory of what happened that you tell yourself again and again instead of keeping on working. And that really fascinated me, how Trungpa describes this process.
I think it's also it's the pursuit of the next and the next and the next, so that this moment isn't perfect. You know, so it's this search. Oh, now I'm going to do this retreat, and now I'm going to recite it this many thousands of times, and now I'm going to do this, just to have, like, you can put into your pocket and then talk about it and add it to your education, let's say, rather than just doing it for yourself. Like, I find also, and I'm certainly guilty of this, like, you know, there was a part in my time in the 2000s when I went to go study Ashtanga yoga, Hatha yoga, and I was also really shunned by the group. And I didn't feel bad about it, but what I understood from learning these different traditions, even starting then to go look at tantric traditions, right? And it was kind of, they were like, how can you, it was like going against, but what it taught me was more deeply about my own practice by looking in through another. You know what I mean? It was just more this way to get to know it. But I also saw, okay, I want to check this, and then I want to do this, and then I want to do that, you know? And it was a way also to say, I've done all these things, rather than sit with one and really work on one, right? It's a treacherous thing, you know, and spiritual teachers are the most tricky in our lives. It's really funny because even if in the teacher training with Yogi Bhajan, he says this. He said your spiritual teacher is your most deceptive one. And I thought, that's actually true, not just in with him, but because we ourselves as students put it onto them as well. I think we're just as guilty, just as guilty. And then I think the teacher also plays to that audience. So whatever you're putting out, you know, they'll trick you with that, because that's what your consciousness is kind of putting into the atmosphere. And they're like, okay, that's what the fish is looking for. I'm going to give you that experience. That's probably a very dangerous thing to say. We get a lot of really pretty negative comments about that. But I do think it's true. I think that teachers also play to the audience, especially to the West. Because I think also for the teachers, it's also this way, okay, it becomes part of this circus. I really do. Thoughts?
This is what you were saying about passing from one thing to the next. This consumption, no? Is what Dr. Nida said is called we are spiritually spoiled.
Yes.
We want this, but also that, this one is a little bit uncomfortable here, so I'm gonna jump to the next one. And then it's like when you go, I don't know if you made the experience, for me it's totally like when you go for a picnic and you look for a nice spot of soft green grass, and you look and oh, that spot is perfect, and then you walk there and it's not so perfect when you're standing there and looking like perpendicular to it, no? But then over there a little further on the hill there is the perfect one, and so you walk there and then it's again not the perfect one, and then you go on and on and on and you get hungry. And so, or when you look for the perfect restaurant on a night out with many friends and you cannot decide and you just walk for like 2 hours and no place is actually good enough, and then you just waste your time and you will end up in some place that still will be not the best for everybody. But it's just what it is. We need to relax.
Yeah, and I don't know. I find, I think with social media, you see this push, and I just, everything has a cycle, so I see in social media through my feed, and even people I know, it's a way to position themselves as experts because they've done all these things, And what I find really fascinating, I was really like thinking about this, like when I say I don't know anything, I really mean it. And it's not because I haven't tried, and it's not because I put myself down, but I know in the presence of teachers, they've shown such a small slice to me that the amount that I could grasp versus what's out there, I know I'm ignorant, And so it teaches me every day to be more humble and to recognize I'm fine where I'm at and it's perfect and it's great, but still, you don't really know much, and just keep observing. Mónica with a puppy dog.
Yeah, I think I was trying to talk about this topic from a like coming to it from a completely different direction. Because to me, it's also like, how in academics, like people that do PhDs, like all respect to people that are doing PhDs, but they can get really into these like topics, but it's just a very close knit, not these specific topics, but like whatever they are studying, and it's a very like close knit group, and they think they know everything, but they haven't been on the field for years.
Right.
So I think this is a little bit like that, because also nowadays, the person that can pay for a teacher training, the person that can have all the things to make their outfit and it's a very specific group, and it doesn't reflect what's out there. And I think this is what I was asking you a little bit in a little bit of a rude manner or aggressive, like, why do you want to like go into a spiritual path? Because if you go out there and talk to people that are doing something completely different, or when I go and do my research and I go, like yesterday I was in the market and I was talking to this family that harvest flowers, and I think they are in such a like beautiful spiritual path, but they are not looking for it, and they are not describing themselves as that, and they have their teachers because their grandparents taught them how to do the flowers. And this is what I was asking you, but like, why do you want to be spiritual? Like, why do you have to put a name onto it? And this is why I was relating this to like just being in academics and saying like, oh, I want to be spiritual and I have this and that. But I know that can be also very simplistic, because also in the book, at the beginning of the book, there was a little section where it says if you want to go into a spiritual path, you have to have a teacher that has gone through that path so they can advise you. It's not that I can make things up and say like, it's okay, I don't need a teacher. I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I'm just trying to make us reflect also, like, these topics that we are talking about also maybe what we see on our own Instagram, and but it's a very specific part of the population that actually have access to be in this like spiritual materialism world. There's like a whole other world out there in which they are trying to connect to their own spirituality. And how, I'm just rambling now, but these things just come to my mind, and how can you contrast these situations and learn from it? Also, when Chandra is talking about cultural appropriation, and how, and you also see how some people are now like, oh, I'm just gonna buy the Palo Santo, or I'm gonna like do these shamanic rituals, or take these plants. I think a lot of that is confusion, because people are trying to get back to this ancestral wisdom, but in my opinion, the way this ancestral wisdom came to be, it is because people were very present. They were present in their bodies and in their lands, so they started to create these rituals. But nowadays, it's really hard for us to be present, and tradition has changed, and these times have changed. So instead of saying like, I'm present and how can I develop my, whatever that means, maybe there's no answer, but how can I develop something that helps me sustain my spirituality and my own being in these times? Maybe it's easier to go back to something that has been done for years. And that on itself, it's like a double-edged sword, you know? Because of course, this situation about cultural appropriation is horrible, but I also talk to friends of mine that are from Mexico, that they are doing a lot of this work, sharing this with others, and there's a lot of excitement about these traditions becoming alive again.
No, I
Even
have
if
to say,
foreigners are the ones that come and like, exploit it.
I have to say I love you both very much. Like really, like I could cry. Like really, like it's so beautiful, Monica, because in these conversations, it's not only in helping kind of just picking apart and people listening to us, right? Like, but it's also for me such a thing for reflection, because in our last episode you said to me, but City, we're humans. And I think
Yes.
I know, and I was like, yeah. you know and like I really had to think about that a lot in between, like this last week, like, okay, yeah, actually, yeah, you know because there's this part where we forget this human experience, and also what you're describing is people who have a presence but also live in this like earthly and human experience. I think that one part is people there's two parts. I think that one part, there's people who are consuming and buying all kinds of retreats and all kinds of teacher trainings and trainings to be shamans and light workers and whatever. There's something for everybody out there these days. But it's also where he describes this trapping of the ego. Okay, then I'm going to get this, then I'm going to be free. And then I'm going to get this, and I'm going to be satisfied. And that, it's just like, everything is a trap, actually. Even time is a trap. It traps the ego, so it's like where we're in, it's exactly what you described, this place of presence right now. Right now is perfect.
And I think this is what I've been kind of quiet this episode, because I don't even like, and also I feel like we like to go really deep. I, at least personally, I have to like keep on, it's like studying and understanding this, because I have no idea and I don't want to say nonsense. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm going back to just being humans. Maybe I'm not meditating enough lately, but I'm like, I'm just trying to get through one day at a time. I don't know. I don't know about how to become enlightened.
Yeah, it's. I was reflecting when you were talking about the fact that that European people and probably also people from the US and some other bunch of countries ruled by industrialized white people, we are just stuck in our heads. We grow up like this, we grow up in families that work like this, and our grandparents were already halfway like this, at least in my case. And so it's like generation of being disconnected from land, soul, heart, and present moment. So this is why I feel that this is maybe the different point of view that we have, because I feel that I see all these people around me that are struggling in this sense, and I would never, or maybe I would have some years ago, but now I would never tell them, oh, you need to meditate, hey, you need to do yoga, you need to pick up, you need to connect with your soul, this is what you need. But there is something that is really broken. There is a connection that has been severed like ages ago. And so all this neurotic behavior, I don't know how to address it. When I am going around town, I try to just be kind, even with very angry people. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. Sometimes I don't remember this and I maybe get angry too. So this is remembering what it is about during everyday life in a place that is not like Mexico, in which you feel the heart of people around you and you feel this groundedness and you feel this tradition. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But here is just like talking about aliens when you say this kind of thing, and there is so much, it's so much thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and doing, and everybody is totally trapped into this, and me too. And this is why I started to meditate, because it gave me a break from my head, This is why I need to keep doing it, because otherwise I will be like, I don't know, maybe I'm even more crazy like this after 12 years of this. But it's like somebody was saying, I don't remember who, but somebody was saying about the Tibetans that the Tibetans place their existence and their being in the center of the chest, like where the heart chakra would be, and the Westerners put it in the forehead.
In the head.
And this is probably exactly the point why we are jealous of you.
I don't know, but And sometimes when I'm asking these questions, I'm being like, but we are humans, or like, but like, why do you want to do this? I think it's because I'm asking those questions to myself, you know? It's not that I have the answers, but these questions are inside my head.
They're good questions.
But yeah, but also acknowledging that I don't think Mexico is perfect. We have a lot of problems in many different areas, but there's some definitely there's something different about how you approach and one another from the heart.
Okay, okay, but also in speaking about that, that there's this market for people who want to have this spiritual pursuit, that means there's people who will come from other places also to give it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So then how do you recognize a teacher? I think really, like, how, you know, it's a question. This is, I think, where some lineage is really important.
yeah,
You have to understand where things are coming through, but maybe it's not. I see that people, they go through a training, they go through a weekend seminar, and now they're great healers, and maybe they are. I could be totally wrong. And then they have their own schools and doing their own things and having this and making promises. I think the heaviness that I feel within my own being when, in growing up, is somehow something I would never want to burden another person with or myself with further. So I'm actively trying not to create more karma for myself. I've said this to myself since I was young. I don't want to have a debt, you know? So even in the teacher trainings and stuff, I'm like, I'm only here to help give you kind of the breakdown, and then it's for you to figure out. Like, I never wanted to be a teacher to somebody. I don't want to carry luggage. So when I see, I think a lot of this, like, where a lot of people, especially in these last years, where there was so much confusion and fear and tension, it just opened the floodgates for anything goes. And then I'll take a little bit from here, I'll copy a little bit from this teacher, I'll do a little bit here, and put it together in a nice, clean package for you so that you can feel holy, holy.
With a nice
You
font.
know? Yeah, right? With a nice font. And I think, somehow it's really kind of a treacherous space in that. I mean, at the end of everything, they're all going to have to meet with Yama, the god of death, and I don't have to worry about it for sure. I will have to too. But I think, we also invite it by this desire, right?
yeah, yeah. I'm personally really confused of what a teacher is, like recently, because um, you can talk about studying from a lineage and just what I said before, how you need a teacher to guide you through it. But also, what does like people relationship with somebody being your teacher can be very flaky nowadays with what you are describing. Like you just go and take a teacher training and then do it. So if I'm not making sense, just stop me. But I'm like what does it mean to have a teacher? And going back to kind of my own experience in my own like professional practice, when we study a lot of how different traditions and rituals pass on, you want to have somebody teach. You want to have the grandparents teach you how to do things, because if they don't teach you, then that knowledge is dead. So um, it's definitely important to have that relationship. But nowadays, and talking, like listening to people talk about the relationship to the teacher or their spiritual teacher, it kind of confuses me. I think I'm just rambling when I'm like, what are you looking in a teacher? And if you want to be a teacher to somebody else, what exactly does that mean to you? Is teacher the wrong word? Maybe we're just like transmitting the information that we learned, but maybe we shouldn't be calling ourselves teachers. I don't know.
Well, I think there's a difference. At least, like, I would say a teacher can be anything because a teacher is also not a heavy. So, in India, they're referred to as a guru, right? And guru, if we look at even Jupiter, it's heavy, it's fat. A guru means somebody that's heavy, that's dense, that's rich, that's kind of been permeated, right? So it's a different relation because a guru is different than a teacher. Let's say like that, right? So I think, certainly I think there's a lot. I think in looking at, I would say to kind of frame it as like a guru, right? Because even in the tradition, even Dr. Nita, I was listening to something to him on Sunday. It was really enjoyable. And he was talking about, he's like, I have more than one root guru. I believe it, it's fine. And I was like, right on. Because everybody thinks you got to have one. And I just think that's not true.
Yes, I also think that's not true.
I just don't think that's true. I do think that there is value to study one thing deeply at a time, and then maybe you find it so you can really go into it. I think that's, for me, that was kind of like I think that's been very helpful so that I can just be concentrated rather than window shopping and then selecting things, like really kind of going through it more deeply. But I really appreciated that. I can say for me, when I look to a teacher is, for me, I'm not actively looking for a teacher, but when I met Yogi Bhajan, I was a little kid. I was little, and I saw him from down the street, and I thought he was the Pope, and I used to make the sign of the cross at him. Yeah, because I was going to Catholic school, not because my parents were Catholic by any means, but they thought, okay, this is the school where they're going to be controlled, because we were naughty kids. They just wanted the nuns will smack them, and that's good, So we went, and so I thought Yogi Bhajan was the Pope, and he used to stick his tongue out at me when I would do it. So that was my first impression. So it's interesting to me that I met him at such a young age later. I went and I sought it out, and for me, he gave me exactly what I was looking for in that moment. And there was things that were indescribable that I can't even say that he had, that also opened up a new dimension. Even with everything that's gone on, he changed my life 1,000%, and I would do it all over again. All over again. And I'm sure I'll meet him in another lifetime, and I'm very grateful for it. And I'm very sad for what happened. But he gave me what I needed. And you know what? He kicked my ass. And I needed that too. And it's interesting because then, in my time with Guru Dev, it was so different. As another teacher for me, he was softer, And actually it was nice because it was, not everything is perfect in any group, and I'm not saying Satnam Resign is, but he gave softness there. The group also gave softness there. There was space, and it wasn't so noisy. It was nice, and I was like, I can relax a little bit. And then it's interesting with my Vedic teachers, Chakrapani was really kind. Pandit Sanjay Roth kicked my ass, still kicks my ass. Bam, 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 bam. And I respond well to that because I need to have my attention sometimes really this. But then I met a female teacher and I was totally shocked at how it touched me. I wasn't seeking her out. And it came in a moment and I was like, I want all the juice from you. And she was laughing and she said, like, Mom, I don't take students. And I was like, but I've got to know what you know. It was totally spiritual materialism, but I just really did. But you know what she really taught me was such a great thing on the feminine side. And she still teaches me on this feminine side, which I didn't have with my male teachers, and I wouldn't change the experience, but I was like, wow, and it was the right moment to actually study with a female because it came. So I think in looking for a teacher, it has something you need. I wasn't dependent, I wasn't vulnerable, but there was something I wanted to extract from that experience. And my time with Yogi Bhajan, with Gurudev, boy, did I do that. I was very smart. I did it. I was really able to keep myself on track with it. So just for me, not for show. And I think with my Vedic teachers, it's very different. It's very different because in the East, they're much more, it's something to be revealed if you've earned it. Where Yogi Bhajan and Gurudev were willing to give and give. Actually, they gave a lot, but these other ones, not, you have to earn it. And so that's a different path. But I have to say, for a teacher, it's like a missing part of the recipe, maybe inside of you. Maybe it's the salt to the soup or the pepper to the soup. Maybe it's like that. Chandra, or thoughts?
I wanted to hear, Monica, what you were saying about having a female teacher.
Yes, because I wanted to say that's really true. The quality, not in terms of if it's good or bad, but just the feeling of having a male teacher from a female teacher is really, really different and interesting. I don't think we have time on this episode to go deep into that, but it's really interesting to look at it, how having a relationship with a male teacher, it's different from having a relationship with a female teacher.
I feel very good now.
Good.
I feel that we really got something out, and I am especially grateful to Monica for reminding us that this Instagram yoga world is not but maybe not the 1%, but maybe the 10%. It's even not if it's the whole reality.
Even if it's the 50%, there's another 50% out there that it's doing other things and having other experiences.
Thank you.
Okay, my dears. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who is listening. Please give us some feedback what your experience of spiritual materialism is externally and internally, how you bring yourself into more awareness in your practice, and how you try to avoid some of the shiny pitfalls of chasing something. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, my dears. Thank you very much. Take care. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please join in the conversation by leaving a comment and sharing your feedback and your experience. We'd love to hear from you. Take care, everybody.